Hello and welcome to the Innovative Mindset Podcast. I'm your host, Isolde Trachtenberg. On the show, I interview peak performing innovators in the creative, social impact, and earth conservation spaces who are working to change the world. This episode is brought to you by Brain FM. Brain FM combines the best of music and neuroscience to help you relax, focus, meditate, and even sleep. I love it and have been using it to write, create, and do some of my deepest work. Because you're a listener of the show, you can get a free trial. Head over to brain.fm/innovative mindset to check it out. If you decide to subscribe, you can get 20% off with the coupon code Innovative Mindset, all one word. And now, let's get to the show. Hey there, and welcome to the Innovative Mindset Podcast. I'm your host, Isolde Trachtenberg. I am super happy that you're here and grateful that you're taking the time to be here, not just with me, but with us. This is Artist's Way Tuesday. Today, and for the next few months, the following people and I are going through Julia Cameron's The Artist's Way week by week. Alan Fessenden and Sergio Giovanni and Megan Vasilis. We are all going through the book. We're talking about our experiences, our worries, our fears, our victories, our gains, our lives as artists, one chapter at a time. This week, we're going to be talking about week 1 of the class, and the chapter is called Recovering a Sense of Safety. So without further ado, let me welcome Megan, Sergio, and Alan. Welcome, y'all. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Isolde. Very excited to be back.
Thank you, Isolde.
Thank you so much for having us again.
Oh, it's absolutely my pleasure. This is a really fun project because I don't know if I'm sure that other people have done it. I'm not sure that they have podcasted about it. It's something that is we talked about this last week when we were talking about the first chapter that we did, not week 1, but the chapter 1. And we were talking about the notion that it makes us feel vulnerable, that going through this process is an opening process, but it also is one that makes us feel vulnerable and a little bit more almost tenderhearted. How do you all feel about that? Do you have that same experience still this week, or are you basically raring to go?
Well,
this is an open question. Anybody can take it.
Isolde, I was thinking earlier, I was just like, wow, Isolde's actually done this whole program before, and she still thinks it's a good idea to put this all on a podcast. So after this week, I feel more vulnerable. Is what I'd be saying here. Yeah, it's very intense work, and it's making you really think about it's making me think about a lot of moments in my life, and it's a little daunting. But I'm excited.
It is.
But it's good too.
And I think both can coexist. You can be daunted and also excited all at the same time. Sergio, Megan, how do you feel about it?
Definitely. Sorry, go ahead, Sergio.
No, thank you so much, Megan. I'm sorry about that. I think for me, personally, I've been trying to allow myself to be more vulnerable, just in general, over the past few years as I got older. And so far for week 1, I don't think that it was anything that was too much for me. There was a couple exercises, not to get ahead of ourselves, but the time traveling ones that I felt a little kind of uncomfortable with. Mm-hmm. But other than that, I don't think it was too much so far. How about you, Megan?
Yeah, definitely. I felt like the vulnerability aspect for me definitely increased this week because there was so much deep diving into the past and even just starting to interrogate the stories I've told myself about my creativity over the years. I think I wasn't totally aware of like what those stories even were until I really started unpacking them. So that's definitely been a process this week. There were definitely a couple of times during the exercises where I actually had to just shut the book and walk away for a couple minutes because it was just getting to be too much all at once.
Right.
But I think it's still a really valuable process just for that reason, because if we don't start to question these things, we won't really know which of those stories is serving us or not.
Absolutely. And that you just touched on something that I think is so crucial. And that is it serving you? Like the whole process of going through the book. If you're doing this and you're going, you know what, right now, this isn't serving me. I feel like I need to step away from the whole thing. Then by gum, I think you should do that just because it is if it's not serving you, then what are you doing spending your time on it? But if it is serving you, even though it's hard, even though it's challenging, there must be some sort of value in it, even if it is challenging and makes you feel vulnerable. Yeah, for me, I feel vulnerable. And like Alan said, I've done this before, but the last time I went through the book was like 2006 or something. The first time was 1997. So it's been a really long time for me. And I feel like a lot of this stuff is coming around on a spiral. You know, you do this and you think about it and you're like, oh, I've dealt with it. Awesome. Let's move on. And then all of a sudden you find yourself years later going, oh, I'm back here. But you're not really back here. I call it a spiral because I think you come around again and you hit the same triggers, but you're hitting them from a different place because more time has passed. You've developed yourself as a person or as an artist. And all of these things have happened as you go, so that when you're on the spiral, you're seeing it from a slightly different perspective, slightly farther away, slightly closer, depending on where you are. And that means that you're going to view it differently and you're also going to respond to it differently. And that's a big part of why, as you said, Alan, you know, why I want to do it again, in part because I think I'm going to approach this differently. I'm already finding that. I'm finding that I'm already approaching it differently. And I think you could probably do this 12 weeks out of every year and get something different every time. So I think it's really cool that we are giving ourselves both the luxury and the challenge of making this work for us at this time, the beginning of 2022. So let's check in, actually, before we go any further. The questions I have is how many days did you do your morning pages and how did that go? How did it feel? Megan, would you like to start first?
Sure. So I actually did morning pages 7 days this week, three longhand pages. And most of the days I really struggled to get through them. It was really hard to focus, or I realized that I was starting kind of late and I had other things to do, or I had a habit this week of starting right when I needed to eat breakfast. So I was hungry. So I was writing a lot about food in my morning pages. But I think even though I had those issues, it was the diligent practice of sticking through it and really, really forcing myself to get through 3 pages at a minimum. It did kind of make it easier to sort of get like the garbage out of my brain early. So I'm glad that I think the exercise had a lot of value for me, even though the focus was definitely a problem for me.
I'm right there with you. Today I did the same thing. I'm gonna do my morning. I'm gonna do it. And today I finished my morning pages at like 7:20 p.m. So not because
good job.
I didn't start them that late, but other things came in, and all of a sudden I went, oh crap! I promised myself I'd do them every day, and I got only half a page in, and then had to. But I'll talk about that in a minute. So Sergio, how about you? What was your experience like of doing the morning pages? How did it feel? How did it go?
So I did 6 out of 7 of this week's morning pages. The one day I didn't do, I didn't sleep many hours. I got up pretty early in the morning and I told myself I was going to go back to bed. And then when I got up properly, I would do my morning pages. And I didn't go back to bed until the next evening. So that's why I missed the one day. I feel like they can be a bit taxing, to be honest. Like Megan and yourself, I would get up and sometimes be running late or have to get to something or do something. And then I'm like, oh shoot, I got to do my morning pages. Let me sit down and do this. With that being said, though, I do feel that as time progresses, that it will be rewarding if I really stick to it and continue with these pages. And I love to journal just in general beforehand. This is just more intense journaling, if you will. But if I can finish this sentiment with a question for you all, how long does it take you generally to do your morning pages? I hope that's not too intimate a question.
Not at all. I will start. It takes me anywhere between 10 minutes and, as today proved, about 10 hours. So if I do it nonstop, I would say generally between 15 and 20 minutes. And that's only because I rip through them. I don't go, oh, I'm gonna write about this. I started this morning with something like, damn it, I have so many things to do and I have blah, blah, blah. And literally that's what I started. And I did a few lines of blah, 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 freaking blah, 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 just because it's no longer and hasn't been for a while for me anything about getting it down well. It's just been about getting it out of me, getting it down. And so I generally between 15 and 20 minutes, but often even faster than that for me. Megan, Alan, what are your thoughts?
Usually it takes me longer than that, about 30 to 40 minutes, usually if I'm just sitting there working through them. And I think that's because I tend to write really slow and longhand. It's just, I actually learned to type before I really learned to write really well by hand. So it's always a little bit physically uncomfortable for me. So it takes a long time.
Yeah, it's different for me if I'm just chicken scratching or if I'm trying to make it legible. So I normally don't try to make it legible, but it's probably like still like 15 minutes because I'm just going through my mind. I'm like, today I like started doing it and then I was like, well, I guess I should make breakfast. So I started breakfast in the middle of my morning pages and then came back and, just oatmeal. So I was able to write during some of the cooking part too. And then I wrote the rest while I was looking at my oatmeal. But yeah, so about like, I don't know, like in that my first thought was a half hour. I was like, it probably takes me a half hour. That's probably the most honest thing. It was just like sitting down and creating that space to just sit there and do it. But cracking open the book and making sure I have a pen, but all that stuff. I try to keep them all together now, but getting started, it just takes me a little time. And then if I get frustrated, mad at myself because I can't read anything, or if I lose my train of thought, it slows me down a little bit. But generally, yeah, like 15 to 30 minutes, I'd say. And I did all 7 days this week.
Can I just?
Yay! And it's challenging, isn't it?
I'm sorry, Alan.
Yeah, it is challenging. I've been lucky that I've had my mornings free, so I've been able to do it. But yeah, I don't know.
It's weird because, in the book she says, well, set your alarm for half an hour earlier. And that's not always doable.
She doesn't know where our alarms are set.
Exactly.
That's really optimistic. Like
it is for sure. And there is a part of it. There's a part of me that goes, well, if I'm really going to make this a priority, then I'm going to just set the alarm earlier and to heck with getting only 3 hours of sleep. But at the same time, especially during this time of the year, I find that the long nights and the cold nights make me want to snuggle in bed longer. So now I have the journal right by my bedside and I open my eyes, I meditate, and I journal immediately. That's sort of the process before I even set my foot out of bed. And to get a little gross on you, that means I haven't gone to the bathroom. So the notion of I have to go to the bathroom makes me write faster. So exactly. So that's a part of it. Did everybody talk about their morning pages but me?
I think so. Yeah.
I think so. Yeah. So
yeah.
I did it. I did it all 7 days. And what was interesting to me is I got some great ideas that I did not expect to have about my business. And, the work that I do with helping companies and people find their creative selves, all of a sudden started coming out in the morning pages, things that I had not put together before. I wrote it out and I went, holy crap. And I actually literally took a picture with my phone of the page so that I would have it, because the way I write, and this is something, Megan, that I would invite you to consider doing, I actually write my morning pages on these laminated sheets of paper that I made little lines and then I laminated them. And the reason I did that is because I write with wet erase markers, so I don't use a paper. So every couple of weeks or whatever, I just wash the pages clean and then I have a brand new set of pages to write with. And the reason I did that is A, to save paper, but B, those wet erase markers glide along the page. So writing, because my hands hurt too when I write longhand, I'm a much better typist than I am a writer. It makes it a lot easier to write. So I'm not hurting myself in the actual process of writing. I don't know if that's helpful to you or not, but it might be something to think about. And I have a little $15 laminator. So if you want laminated pages, let me know. Not you out there in the world, because I'm not going to be laminating pages for thousands of people. But yeah, it's something to think about. That laminate the pages and then reuse them saves paper, and also it's very easy to write with those wet erase markers.
Oh, I would never have thought of that. That's an amazing idea. Thank you. Thank you for that.
Sure. Yeah. I believe in being efficient, but I am a pain wuss, and I'm not interested in being in pain. That, my karate teacher used to say, no pain, no gain. And I was like, yeah, no pain, no pain. That's where I am. That's where I sit. So anyway, so let's move on. What about the artist date? Who did their artist date this week? Anybody want to share about that?
I did my artist date, and I am I'm a little pleased with myself because
Awesome.
I find it so difficult. It's such a difficult prospect to just go spend time with myself. And honestly, there's my solo show, Almost Perfect, has a joke in it about me living in New York, and my ideal date is like a dinner and a movie when there's so much else to do. So I already have trouble thinking of date ideas for any date, let alone myself.
Right.
So I think it was Friday it snowed. Is that right?
I think
Friday it snowed.
Thursday or Friday.
Uh-huh. Yeah, one of those days. I think it was Friday, but whenever it snowed, I was like, oh my God, it snowed. I want to go out in the snow. But my dog, I walk her, and then she just wants to come back inside. And it was cold. And so I just hung out. I didn't have to go anywhere, so I was inside, and I was like, well, maybe I'll get this camera that we have, and I'll charge that, and I'll go take pictures of the snow. And that was my big artist date. And then the camera, I found out, needs to be charged, and I don't know where the charger for the battery is, so I didn't have the camera. I was like, well, I guess I can do it the way I've always done it with my iPhone, the way I've always done it,
Since iPhones have existed.
So I dragged myself out in the cold, and it was really cold, just to take pictures of the snow and walk around my neighborhood and just not plan to take pictures, but just see what I was inspired by. And I took a bunch of fun pictures, and I just walked out, walked around, and didn't have a direction, and was standing in streets hoping I didn't get hit so I could get certain shots. That was the other thing. I decided that I would give myself time to take a picture, because I'm always like, I don't want to be seen taking a picture or thinking about it too much. So I was like trying to let myself set up shots and really deliberately take photographs, and it was nice. And then I stopped by a local vegan bakery, Clementine's, and got myself a hot chocolate and a croissant.
Oh, that sounds delightful. A croissant and hot chocolate. Now I want a croissant and hot chocolate. Yum.
It was an almond croissant.
I think I'm always in the mood for a croissant.
Right, exactly. When isn't a good time for
Always a good time.
Yeah, exactly. When isn't a good time for a croissant hot chocolate? So I love the notion that you said of giving yourself the time and the space to set up shots. That's a lovely thought and image, because because iPhones and other smartphones are so prolific, and everybody is snapping shots all the time. Everything, sort of like anything goes, do it quick, get it down there, put it up on Instagram or TikTok or whatever. And this notion that you said, it felt kind of almost decadent to take the time and space to set up shots and really get the shot I wanted. What was that like for you to actually take that time? How did that feel?
Nerve-wracking. No, I was just I saw this woman. I was taking a picture, and this woman was sort of just looking my general direction, but not at me, but clearly like had her focus that way, waiting for someone. And I took a picture, and I was like, okay, I've been seen, move along. Then I was just like walking down. I turned a corner, and I saw something else that I decided to take a picture of. And I was just sitting there. This woman walks by, and she was holding 2 bananas, which I had noticed before. And she just said, hey again. And I was like, just walking around with 2 bananas. And she was like, points to a kid who was following her, and I was like, oh, okay, gotcha. Like, and she's like, do you want one? And I was like, absolutely not, but thank you. But it just, I know this is, but I was like, oh, I've been seen, I've been caught trying to be creative, and I think like, oh, that's such a weird thing. I do feel like I have to be creative in secret almost. Like, I don't want people to know I'm working on something until it's ready, or I don't want people to see me working on stuff, I guess is the situation. But that's a discovery for me to work out.
It is, and I thank you for sharing that. That's a big, huge freaking deal what you just said. that no, seriously, because learning that about yourself is, I think it's important. I think there's something there for you to really to sort of look at and unpack and see what that's about for you.
Oh, absolutely. I'm joking.
don't-
I'm laughing, but it definitely felt like I just said something that I should think about and analyze and interrogate, as Megan would say.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, and if you want to share about it more, either now or in the weeks and months to come, I would love to hear about it, because there is something, I think, that hits me where I live also, that notion of, when is it okay to be creative? When is it okay to be an artist? And what kind of art is it okay to do publicly, like, so that other people know about it? And the fact that I'm even asking these questions, or that you had this reaction and response to being creative out there, is very telling for us as people who are working on themselves creatively.
Yeah, I guess I did think a little bit about this, and this thought had hit me the other day where I was just like, or maybe it was that day, but I was just like, I'm doing something, I have something going on in my life, and nobody else knows, and what they think doesn't matter, but it doesn't mean that they're not thinking things. And just now, as I was like, how does this translate? And I was like, well, we're always impressed when people are doing a movie or shooting a film, but we're not so impressed if they're like in our way or taking over our coffee shop, so we have to go to a different coffee shop. It's still annoying when people are creating in front of, like, around you or something. Like, that's the most obtuse metaphor I can think of, or version of that I think of, where it's just like, I feel like I'm in someone's way, or they're just like, what? It doesn't matter what you're doing right now, because it's not important to me in this moment. And I definitely am a bit of a people pleaser, so I don't like to make anyone uncomfortable or inconvenienced at all. And I think when I just like, if I like angle down too much into the sidewalk to take my photo, then I'm like, someone has to walk around me so that I can get this shot that may ultimately just sit on my phone or what, nobody knows. And so
I think there's a way for you to create and achieve those moments while still being mindful of your surrounding, right?
Yeah, I'm
And
mindful.
people.
It's just a matter of not being self-conscious, I guess, or whatever.
Yeah. And that right there is the kicker, isn't it? Like, I'm taking a photograph, and yet somehow I'm self-conscious about the fact that I could be inconveniencing people. And you know what? To be honest, they can walk around you too. There is a certain amount of respect we can be giving to people who are doing something different. And that's not a judgment call on anyone. It's just an awareness thing. I remember I was walking down the street near the public library, and there was a woman who she wasn't walking down the street in front of me. She was literally dancing, like she had earbuds in or something, and she was grooving down 42nd Street. And I actually video recorded her, and I said, when I posted it, I was like, this is how I want to start all my days, just grooving down the street, dance like nobody's watching. She didn't care. She was just doing her thing. And I love that, So there's a certain amount of yay, Alan, go you, that is important here to sort of say, I think, that you did it, that you went out there and you did the thing you wanted to do. And it doesn't matter if other people were necessarily inconvenienced in that you weren't inconveniencing anybody probably.
Yeah, probably did.
You just were, just taking your photograph or whatever. So I'm thrilled for you. I think that's great. Ooh.
Thank you.
What about, oh yeah, absolutely. What about you, Sergio, Megan, either one of you go on an artist date?
No, I'm waiting for Megan.
You go first. You go first.
I feel like I went first last time. Please.
Okay.
Megan, take it away.
I'm going to have to do it one at a time from now on. I think that's the lesson I've just learned.
So I did go on an artist date. And so for the past couple of months now, I've been kind of on an extended holidaycation with my family who doesn't live in New York. So I just kind of got in my car and went driving, which to me is sort of like the height of luxury because it's just not something I really do at home in New York. And I ended up at the library where I used to spend time when I was a kid, when we lived here before, when I was really, really young, like 8, 9, 10. And I couldn't go inside because we're still isolating here. But it was after dark anyway. It was completely deserted and it had like this really eerie quality, but just spending time even just outside, like I walked around and I was taking pictures and I was just remembering how this place felt to me when I was a child, like we didn't have a lot of money when I was growing up, and the library was always a space where I could go and I could have anything I wanted. And that was really, this building was really the place where I fell in love with books. I would this beautiful, beautiful palatial children's wing that I could kind of see even from outside through the window, like this huge atrium. I mean, it's a lot smaller now than it looked to me at the time when I was, 11 years old. But it was just amazing to kind of just remember what that was like for me and how important that was for me as someone who grew up to really love books and to love writing. And while I was there, I also wrote a poem about the library. It just sounds so nerdy when I'm talking about it, but it was a really cool experience for me. And it just was sort of nice to revisit that part of my past. And it was a little bit weird because I was the only person there. And I did feel like, gosh, if like the cops drive by and I'm like this woman outside taking random pictures of the library, like what is my cover story? But luckily nothing happened. And I don't think anybody even never knew I was there. So
That's so interesting. I think I want to get us T-shirts that say "It's okay, I'm on an artist date," so that we can wear them when we're on our artist dates. Because again, making it important is lovely, and I'm sure the cops would have looked at you and gone, "Oh, somebody wants to go into the library, but the library's closed," and they would have probably driven on. And just so you know, you don't sound nerdy. You sound like someone who loves books and reading and writing. And I'm with you all the way. That is where I spent the bulk of the time when I was growing up. I had some challenges not speaking English, all of these other things. And where my safe space was my school library. That is where I went during lunch. That is where I went on all of our recesses. I was at the library and I became friends with the librarians. And here's what's interesting. This is one of those moments in time when I have to say I love Facebook because most of the books that I've written, I have dedicated at least out of the 6, I think at least 4 have been dedicated to my 6th grade English teacher, Linda Gutman, without whom I would not love to read for sure. She got me started. And I was talking about her on Facebook and saying how excited I was. And I said something along the lines of, I'm sure she wouldn't remember me. And she found that post. And she said, "Of course I remember you. Why would I not remember you? I remember you. I had you, for English when you were in the 6th grade." And one of my librarians from Ms. Wallach said, "Isolde, everybody remembered you. You were a treasure." And I went, tears, I just started weeping because I was this lonely, isolated immigrant kid who didn't speak the language all that well and and the only people I interacted with for a long time were the librarians, and they made me feel incredibly welcome. And to know that they remembered me is just mind-blowing because this was 1976, I think, 76, 77, something like that. So it's been a while, And so books brought us together and we're still friends to this day. And now, of course, we're, we're not student and teacher, but the fact that libraries do that is monumental, and they bring all sorts of people together. So don't ever be ashamed of loving libraries and books. I think they are awesome. So there you go. Sergio, what about you? What are your thoughts about, or did you already talk about your artist date?
No, not yet.
Okay, cool.
Can I just start with saying that I think the best cover story for all suspicious creative activity is that I'm currently doing the artist way. I think that should
That's right.
give everyone a pass. And also, doing poetry in the library sounds like a rad artist date. For sure, for sure.
Totally.
For me, this week I went to my local comic shop. I read lots of comics. I collect lots of comic books. But that's something I do typically already. So what I did to make it more of a date was I went down to a bakery that's like a block down from there that I don't typically go to often. And I bought some bread and a few snacks and indulged when I got back to my place in comics and baked goods, which is always
a great
Wednesday.
combo.
Yeah. And just an anecdote too about or segue from the comic shop. So there's a current comic series that I just finished reading, an indie series by Image Comics called Geiger. And it's about this man who lives in a post-apocalyptic world, as they tend to be in a lot of these comic books. And he has radioactive powers, right? So he lives a life of solitude. And because of that, one of the only things he has left to do is to read books. And then in the comic, they make it a point. They really emphasize that he's read everything already because he's been alive for so long and he's in almost dire need for a new book. And later in the series, after breaking into a government facility to save some children, he finds this guard who's reading a book, and it's a book he's never read. And he asks the guard if it's any good, and then he punches him out and takes the book for himself. And the book the book that he finds is The Artist Way. And I couldn't believe it. Talk about synchronicity. Just as I started this process, a comic that I'm reading refers to the book, has the book in the pages. It was funny. It was cool. The idea of Geiger and I going through The Artist Way together. And I just had to share. I couldn't believe it. Like the whole book
that is so cool.
Comic in the panels.
Oh, amazing. I love it. That's so awesome.
And it was the workbook too. It wasn't the main book. It was the actual workbook that we're using.
Right.
So
yeah.
That was pretty rad.
That's really cool. I love it. I love it. Oh, my stars. See, okay, so then she probably won't mind the fact that we're talking about this book on the podcast. If it's already been in a comic book, it's arrived. So for me, my artist date was yesterday. I actually kind of went with Rich in that we went to see Jeremy Jordan's last show as Seymour, Little Shop of Horrors. And it was so good. It was good. It was really good. I really enjoyed it. And I mean, I've seen the show many times. I've seen the movie. The movie's different, blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. And I actually told myself I was going to view it with a theater. I was a English drama major, so I was going to view it as through the lens of a drama major instead of just I'm an audience member. I was going to look at it and review it in my mind and the choices in blocking and the choices in characterization and vocals and all of that. But then afterwards, we went to if you're back in New York anytime soon, Megan, you might be interested in this too. And this is for everybody. But if in the Garment District on Broadway between 40th and 39th, there's a cool art installation right now that is these sort of half circles of light. There are these. I don't even know how to describe it. It's like somebody made. They're like light. It's a light installation where you walk through this tunnel made up of long curved lights, and it plays music, and the music is synchronized to the different colored lights and patterns that this colored light tunnel puts on as you walk through it. It's hard to explain, but there it is. And I went through it, I don't know how many times. I just kept, walking through and then turning around, coming back to the other side and walking through again and just seeing what that notion of sound and light coming together in these different patterns as I walked under them or through them, what it brought up for me. And it brought up some ideas about new paintings that I want to make. And it brought up some ideas about a book that I'm writing right now. So I just sort of let myself be open to what the experience of being in this art installation brought up for me. And that was my artist state. Ta-da.
Sounds great.
It was really cool. Yeah. Yeah, I highly recommend it. Apparently, a much longer version of this, like 3 blocks long, was at Burning Man a few years ago. So when I shared about it on Facebook, a bunch of people were like, "Oh, I think this was at Burning Man." So if you ever go to Burning Man, that's the kind of thing, I guess, that you will see. Those kinds of art installations you can be part of. I have never been, in part because I don't want sand in places sand was never meant to be, and apparently sand gets into everything. So I won't be going to Burning Man anytime soon. Anyway, so let me ask you a question. Did you have issues? And if so, what were they? Doing the artist state or completing the morning pages or any of the exercises? Did you come up with any issues that you want to share about with the actual act of completing some of this stuff? Alan, you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. Completing the morning pages or the artist date or any of it is what you're saying.
Any of it, because we're gonna go through and talk about it. But I just wanted to see. For me, I'm gonna let me share first. Then, my issue this time of year is fatigue. I am constantly tired in the cold and in the long nights. So, getting myself sort of geared up to do things, to go outside, to be in the cold. As I get older, it's harder for me. I admit it. And so this, as Rich was saying, my husband was saying the other day, he's like, that's why people have homes in New York and also homes in Florida, because they go down there for the cold weather. And I was like, oh, okay, I guess maybe we need to start saving our pennies and see if we can find a way to be able to do that, because it is harder for me as I get older to spend a lot of time in the real cold. I just get to the point where all I want to do is cocoon. So that was my big issue, is fatigue with completing these exercises and actions that we had to complete this week. So that's the kind of thing I'm asking about. If you had that and you want to share about it so that we can maybe illuminate the struggle for somebody who's listening, but if you didn't, that's totally cool.
Well, yeah, I mean, I definitely feel the fatigue of winter. I was just talking about the cold reminded me that my the next day after the snow, it was just ice, and my steps I have like outdoor steps to my apartment, and they just ice over. So like from when I opened my front door to the top of the steps, there's all ice, and then the first 3 steps were ice, and I had to like walk my dog, and that was the day I did laundry. So I definitely felt like if not fatigue, then like danger. And my other issue that sort of caught me by surprise, but I was like nervous about doing this last week and getting set up for it, and we did it, and I was like, nervous about how it was going to sound, and I ended up not hating myself last week after listening. What a success story. What's that?
So you were great last week. You had me rolling on the re-listen.
Yeah.
I'm not seeking compliments, but I was just, I'm a big critic of myself, and so I wanted to be happy with it. I was like, all right, it was nice. I got some feedback from family. It was good. And then I was like, I'm done. I did it. Did it. And then I was like, a day later, I just kept doing my morning page, and I was like, I gotta get back into the book and start doing the exercise. I'm supposed to be working with stuff while my morning pages, and I'm not doing it. So it's like plugging back in. I felt like that big push to do something was this podcast last week, and then I felt like relief. So sometimes that I'll sit too much in the relief, and I need to like get back on that pony, I guess, or whatever it is.
Yeah, you getting back on it can be a challenge, because there is this, that kind of wrung me out, and now I need a break, and then you have to gear yourself back up for getting back up and doing more, and that can be a challenge for sure.
And then Zola, I don't know if you've felt this, but also just because I started it last year, I already sort of have some anxiety about the things I had problems with last time. So I'm like going into it with a little bit more trepidation. It reminds me of running the second marathon, which is the first marathon. You're like, go train. Second marathon, you're like, well, I did it. and I know it's coming. I don't want to do all that.
Right.
Excuse me. But yeah, so
Yeah.
there's a little bit of like hesitation or like
Sure.
nervous about going back into these spaces. But actually I felt more clear-headed about it this time, and overall that's good.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I
Thank
mean,
you.
and that's the thing. On some level, forewarned is forearmed, right? So now you know a little bit more about what to expect. Only this time you have other people in your corner going, "Yay, Alan, you can do it!" And that's a big part of it. Is where we're in this together, and that's the whole point. If you're listening to this and you're going, "Yeah, this makes me feel nervous," don't forget. We're going to be here all through the entire book for the next couple of months, going through some of the same things you're probably going through. There's nobody here is not going through something like that. Everybody's going through some sort of come to Jesus moment about who they are as a person and who they are as a creative.
Excuse me.
So that is quite all right. I understand. Sneezing happens. Megan, Sergio, I'm going to call on you because I'm going to do this one at a time from now on. Sergio,
Oh no.
what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so for me, as far as issues, I'll say that the morning pages were probably one of the more challenging things, or just doing them first thing. It felt really good to hear, though, all of you speak earlier about how there were times where you would stop halfway through and then get back to it, because I definitely did that a couple of the days and I felt really bad about it. But now I don't feel as bad, which is just one of the great things about doing this with other people and sharing this process with other people. Can really make you see things differently, and maybe not beat yourself up as much about things that you shouldn't be beating yourself up about. And I think for me, that was the main issue. As far as the tasks go, I will say that there was one task that was a bit problematic. And she mentions that you don't have to do them all, but she asks you to do the ones that you resist the most. So the fourth task in this week, time travel, the horror story from your Hall of Fame, from your Monsters Hall of Fame. That one was quite difficult for me to sit there and think about and to write about. But I feel like, in a way, it already added to this growth that I think is going to happen with all of us as we pursue this book and the process. But just that task specifically, I felt like was a bit challenging, and the morning pages. But other than that, no other issues.
Cool. Yeah, that all of the stuff where you have to go back and do things like time travel and go back and find the person or the people who made you first feel like you shouldn't or can't be creative or be an artistic person. That can be really hard. Sometimes you don't remember. Sometimes it's taking a stick and poking something very tender with that stick, that can be really challenging, and it can be something that takes some time. And that's one of the things that I've done with this book is when I've gone through it the first time, I tried to bulldog my way through it and go, I'm going to make this happen. And the second time I went through it, I kind of went, okay, this exercise, not this week. I'll earmark it and I'll come back to it maybe week 8 or week 9. And that's okay too. Feel free, I think, whether or not you're one of us four or you're listening to this, feel free to take this at your own pace and feel free to be very gentle with yourself about what happens when, because you get to choose. That's the best way to put it. No one is holding a gun to your head. You get to choose how and when to do what you do. Megan, what about your thoughts on this? What were your challenges, if you had any?
I think my biggest challenge was definitely the physical issue with my hand. It's just I'm not totally comfortable writing by hand for that length of time. I don't think I actually ever have in my life, really. I've always typed almost everything. So that itself was a little challenging because my hand would get tired and it would hurt and I'd have to stop and come back to it. And I also think that I just wasn't easily creating the space in the day that I really needed to do it. Like I was not setting my alarm 30 minutes early. I was just trying to fit it in around like making food and, doing all my meditation and all of that stuff. And I think when I didn't create the space for it to actually happen, I was a little bit rushed in going
Mhm.
through it, or I was just writing like stuff that wasn't really digging into anything. And then right at the end, I'd suddenly hit something and then, oh, morning pages are over and I have to move on. So I think that for me in the future, it would really be helpful to, really make sure that I am getting up a little bit earlier to make sure that I actually get to it. And that I have both the physical space and the time to actually spend, that time that I need to get through it.
Right, to dedicate to it, that you don't feel rushed or like resentful. And what's really interesting about that is that I sometimes feel resentful on morning pages, even though I know it's good for me and it's something I want to be doing. I still resent the crap out of it. Doggone it, I don't feel like doing this right now. So that's valid. It's absolutely valid. You are absolutely allowed to feel resentful about something that's good for you. I feel very resentful towards kale, for example. Very resentful.
No.
I'm dead serious. I hate that.
Really, you're not
I
alone
hate that
there.
stuff. Blah. All right. Anyway.
Kale chips.
Oh, no. It tastes so bitter to me. Never. One of these days I will tell you what a bad vegan I used to be. Okay. So let us move on. So this chapter, now we're finally getting to start in on the chapter. This chapter is called Recovering a Sense of Safety. And I'm not sure, honestly, that this chapter has given me a sense of safety. So far, it's kind of brought up stuff, but it hasn't increased how safe I feel creating. I feel pretty safe creating, actually, because it's what I do all the time. But the big thing for me is in this dark time of the year, I don't have a lot of mind or body energy to create. And that's where the feeling of safety comes in for me is the guilt around you could be doing something that's going to pay your rent, Isolde. Are you sure you want to be dedicating this time to the artist's way or whatever? Because I will make room for creativity. I had a lot of trouble with this chapter going, I don't feel safe because right now, when I don't have a lot of energy, I need to allocate my resources very wisely. And that is the problem. Not so much, I'm worried about being creative. It's more, I'm worried about having the energy that I need to serve my clients so that I can still pay rent, so that I can still keep living in New York, so that I can still keep following the dreams of living here until they drag my carcass away. So that's my thought, the overall thing about this chapter. And I have a bunch of questions for all of you, but I was wondering, did the chapter in its entirety give you any thoughts, or should we just jump in and discuss the chapter as we go?
Let's just jump in and go for
let's
it.
jump in. So let me start with the first question. She talks about support, presumably of other people, being like one of the most important things that you need as an artist. And if so, what do you think makes support of other people important? And if not, what else do you think might be most important for an artist to be an artist? Sergio, why don't you go first if you have a thought about that?
Sure. I think support in just anything that you're doing is always important. And as far as being creative, it can be hard to find support or find support that you feel is genuine and authentic, maybe.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I know I've definitely been grateful enough to have family and friends support me through different endeavors through the years. And I hope that we all can find that support. And I'm glad that we're here for each other, to support each other, not just through this process and the series we're going through, but with everything else going on in life. So I appreciate you. And yeah, support is important, I guess is
Cool.
my summation.
Awesome. Thank you, Sergio. And Alan, what about your thoughts on that?
Damn.
Do you want me to come back to you or restate the question?
No, I'm just thinking about the question. What makes support important? And I feel like, generally speaking, the way we see ourselves has a lot to do with how we think other people see us.
Mm.
And so if those other people are looking at us and saying what you're doing is good and right, then it's easier to keep doing those good things rather than feeling the need. Like, you can always revolt against that feeling, but somewhere you're looking for someone to support you and validate that work. I think, not validate it, but like, yeah, maybe validate it. Maybe that's the word I'm looking for. I don't know. It just makes it like it's like someone saying you're on the right path. So it's like a verbal sign. It's another living, breathing body that's can communicate with you and might be interested in you. And it's just someone being like, yes, I'm interested in you. I'm interested in what you want to do. I'm interested in supporting you. And it feels like power almost. Like, it feels like you've been gassed up a little bit or given that a boost and energy. Yeah. I think it's someone being like, here's a little more energy, you know?
Yeah. I was actually, I'm glad you said it, Sergio, because I was about to pop in with that too. It feels like an energetic boost, even though as I say that, I go, but there have been some really amazing artists who worked alone in their bedrooms and were like Van Gogh, for example, who's one of my favorites. No one really knew about his stuff until after he died. I mean, he didn't have a lot of success of any sort.
He didn't have success,
you know.
I'm sorry, I don't know his story.
No,
but
go ahead.
He didn't. There was no one supporting him, or what's the?
I mean, he spent a lot of time in asylums, right? He spent a lot of time being on his own, and everyone thought he was at least a little bit insane, and and on some level he was insane, but he also had this incredible way of looking at the world. He was able to put into 2 dimensions things that we only dreamed about in 3 dimensions. It was amazing. And that kind of mad genius doesn't happen very often, but he certainly didn't have the kind of success he's had since he passed, before he passed. So he didn't really have a lot of people going, yes, you're awesome, as opposed to someone like Basquiat, for example, who also died very young, but who Andy Warhol took under his wing and helped really foster his talent and support him and introduce him to all the right people and all of this stuff. So if we're talking about that kind of art, there's a difference, I think, between someone who did get that sort of support like Basquiat did and someone who didn't. Yet both of them were able to come out with works that have elevated the experience of seeing the art. You know, you see a Van Gogh, you see a Basquiat, you will be moved. You may hate one or love the other or whatever, but you will be moved. You will have an experience viewing their art, whether or not they had support. You know what I mean? So there's something there that we can plumb, that if you're sitting there and you're by yourself and you're listening to this episode and you're going, well, I don't have anybody who supports my art and I don't have anybody who thinks it's good. I'm here to say, make it anyway, do it anyway. Because support from someone else is someone else's opinion, right? That you're good or you're not good. But what's most important, as far as I'm concerned, is that you believe in yourself and that your art has validity, whether or not anyone else knows about it or anyone else supports it. You deserve to make it because intrinsically you're a creative person. That's how I feel about it anyway.
Yeah, I guess I was thinking of support in definitely for the art, but I think, sorry, I just maybe it just made me think like, maybe that lack of support for his art or whatever, support in general for him, put him in the place of being crazy, but didn't stop him from being an artist, or put him in a place of having like mental struggles, but didn't stop him from making stuff. And I think like we should definitely go make stuff, whether we're supported or not. But I think like having that someone supporting you is like, oh yes, it's easier. It lifts some junk off your shoulders so you can like make better art or make more art or continue. Like, it's like a push. It's like you can't stop an artist from being an artist, but you can definitely help them be an artist by supporting them.
Absolutely. No, I agree with you completely, Alan. I really do. And it's an important distinction there between feeling alone in sitting in your bedroom and creating or whatever versus knowing that there's someone out there who's cheering you on, and if that person is artistic, that you can also be a cheerleader for them. There's something really crucial, I think, and that's why I asked you three to join me on this journey to begin with, is because I think having someone else there to support you and cheer you on is important, because it helps you feel just a little bit more free to create. I still think that if you want to create, you should create. Boom, absolutely.
Boom.
And it's like you said, Alan, it's helpful if somebody else is in your corner. So, Megan, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, so I was thinking a lot about this week, kind of along the lines of what you were just saying, Isolda. Like, for me, the difference between the idea of support versus validation. And I think I've always been really lucky in having a lot of support from my parents. I've always, I've just always had the idea that I can create. And when I was a kid, I created in this really natural way. I mean, everything I did was like pretending, imagining, and telling stories. And then when I was a teenager and even well into my 20s, I sort of hit this awkward phase that I think a lot of us do,
sure,
where that suddenly became a lot more difficult. And I started to look for validation, like permission almost to create, or just reassurance that what I was creating mattered, or that it was important enough to make. And then I think that was where I started to get stuck a little bit, because nobody can really give you that kind of validation but you, and what I really needed was to cultivate more of that support. And I think that's something really special that I think I found in our group, the Vegan Writers in New York, because that's it's a really nice supportive community. But I've also learned that for me to really become the kind of creative person that I want to be, I need to be able to validate myself. I can't rely on someone else to tell me that the work I'm doing is important. I just have to be able to do it.
Absolutely. I agree with you 152%. And it's because on some level, if you wait and you don't get that validation or support, then it might stop you from creating. And therein lies the problem, that as soon as you do that, you give, on some level, you give control over whether or not you're going to create at least a little bit to someone else. And that is tough for me, because I'm a control freak, as you might have noticed. So I can hear you all laughing. I know. I am a control freak. I admit it. It's okay. I admit it totally. All right. So, and there's a lot to be said for that. But then there's the next question that she brings up: is early encouragement critical? Why or not, or why not? Because Cameron says, the people who didn't get this early encouragement might not think they're artists at all. And I'm going to start with my story. It's a little tough, but I'm being as honest as I can be. As I mentioned last week, I'm a child abuse survivor, and my story about that early encouragement is that I only got encouraged, read, do it or I'll beat you, that's the best way to put it, to play the violin. My father wanted to hear violin piano duets. My sister played the piano, therefore I played the violin, whether or not I wanted to. And to this day, I have a love-hate relationship with the instrument. It was only after I quit for like 10 years when I was 14 and came back to playing that I was able to come back to it and play fiddle. And that's like, I play traditional folk jazz. I don't play classical. Why? Because I was forced to play classical. My only early encouragement was not to sing or to write or to dance or to act, which were the things that I wanted to do. It was, you're going to play the violin. That's it. That was, 2 hours a day you're going to practice. And so it was, quote, encouragement, unquote, but it was certainly not encouragement of the kind of artist that I wanted to be. So it made my entire relationship with the instrument and music as a whole a challenging one until I worked through it in that intervening 10 years from 14 to 23. So what are your thoughts on that, on early encouragement? Is it critical? And is it important to developing artists later on? Let's see. Megan, why don't you go first this time?
Yeah, I do think that's really important. And I was very lucky to have parents who supported me when I was really, really young to create stuff. I was writing stories when I was really young. I was always creating and imagining, and again, in this really natural way. But I do think that when I got older, and it did sort of create an environment for me where I had an expectation that I would be creative, but then I expected to be I think partly because I'm also a perfectionist. I think I expected to be better than I could be at like 12 or 13 years old. So then I got really discouraged just looking at my own stuff and seeing, well, gosh, I'm not writing like, I don't know, Hemingway, 13 years old. And then yeah, when I got to college, I think an issue I ran into there as someone who was, really majoring in creative writing and really trying to, see a career for myself in that field. A lot of my professors would tell me things like, "Oh, you're so talented, you're doing really well, but that there's nowhere you can go with this." And so I think they probably intended that to be like a call to action, like, because I wasn't the only person they said that to. I had friends who heard that also. But to me, like, especially when I was graduating right into the middle of the recession, like that was, to me, it was just, they were telling me that there was no hope and that I should just give up. And then, so it turned into this period of time for years when I really struggled with that feeling, like, why was I creating? Like, because I never lost that feeling that I always wanted to, that it was something so intrinsic that I just kind of had to do, but also that maybe there was just no way forward for that if I wanted it to be even part of a career. And so I think that early support was really important to me in teaching me that I could be a creative. But I think in some ways I also didn't learn to validate myself. Like I said before, I don't think that later experience would have been so crushing if I'd had more time to kind of build up that muscle a little bit more.
And it makes me wonder, though, what could have been different? What could you have done differently to learn that earlier on? What could other people have done differently to help you? If the answer might be nothing, the answer might be you had to go through what you went through to come out the other side. But it's something for us all to think about, like, what could have happened differently? And maybe that's part of that time travel in these exercises that Cameron talks about, that we can see what could have gone differently. The key here is to not get mucked in with, if only it had been different, I would be X, because that way lies madness and bad B movies, I think, is when you start going, oh, it could have been different if only, because that if only just makes you pissed. I don't think it necessarily is helpful. So let's see. Alan, what about you? Any thoughts on early encouragement and whether or not it is critical to artists being artists?
Yeah. I do have thoughts, probably. First, I just want to say thanks, Isolde, for sharing your story and being so open and honest about that, because it's you say it sort of like, this is my thing, and I think it's not everyone does that, to speak about your own child abuse. And so I want to thank you for putting that out there and just talking about it as like one of the facts of people's lives, unfortunately, but it's a true story.
Yeah, it is unfortunate. Yeah, it is a true story, and I appreciate you saying that. And yeah, I'm on a mission in some ways to normalize the fact that a lot of people go through it, but it's not something we talk about, because as adults, we start thinking, well, I either should have been able to stop it or it shouldn't be a factor in my life anymore. And I think when it's early abuse like that, it's a factor in your life, your whole life, but you have to, again, normalize it and really be honest with yourself about who you are, both because of and also in spite of what happened to you.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are so far removed from the possibility of that, so it's they can't consider it. But I think, like, as much as it affects you negatively, like, you have to think. To me, what I'm trying to say is, like, if there's a negative effect, then the opposite is probably true, right? Like, it can have a long, like, things that hit you as a kid will stay with you. And I'll just tell this ridiculous story, but my mother, she wasn't the best cook growing up, at least in our younger years, and she would burn a lot of things. And one of the things she would burn was toast. And she told us that burnt toast was good for us, right? Later on, I'm working as a waiter in college, and the chef sends out a burger and it's on a burnt bun. And the woman says, I have a burnt bun. And I said to her, that's good for you. And she just looked at me like, you're absolutely insane. And I was like, Oh my God, my mother was lying to me.
This whole
This
time.
whole time.
I thought it was good.
I've been burning my toast for all that time.
Oh
No,
goodness.
but
Have you since learned? Do you no longer burn your
I
toast?
no longer burn my toast. I didn't know. I didn't really
I'm
like
so
it
glad
that
to
way.
hear it. Oh no, I had a friend once actually who liked burnt toast. She liked her toast black, and she was spending the night, and we were making toast, and she set fire to my mother's toaster oven. And my mother is this little tiny Russian Jewish woman, like she's 5 feet and weighs 95 pounds or something, teeny tiny woman. I have never seen a fire breathing dragon like she was when she saw the toaster oven on fire. She was not pleased, but Helene really loved her toast. Black carbon. She wanted carbon. She didn't want to eat bread. She wanted to eat carbon.
Oh,
Anyway,
all right.
so so who's the next person? I think Sergio, you're the next person about this, about early encouragement and its importance.
Yeah, sure. I just wanted to say I really liked earlier, Isolde, when you mentioned the if onlys or the what ifs being like a bad B movie. That really resonated with me, and I feel like that happens a lot with me, right? I'll go through these like rough approximations of like what could have happened or what should have happened or what could be, and regrets can really get
Oh,
to
sure.
you, especially when you're creating. And I think that reassurance definitely can help you cultivate your creativity. So early encouragement, I think, is a great thing, and we feed off of energy, right? I really believe that's a thing that we do. We feed off of energy. So if we're able to provide just positive, supportive nourishment and this energy that we give to other people, then I see it only being beneficial, especially when you're growing up and when you're young. And I also wanted to say thank you for sharing your story, Isolde. And I'm sorry about the things that you had to go through. And yeah, that's how I feel about that.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you. As I said, it's something that we can normalize and talk about because the people who have gone through it often feel shame about having gone through it, and I don't think anybody should feel ashamed of what somebody else did to them when they were 5 years old.
Absolutely not.
So yeah, but at the same time, there is a lot of shame around it for a lot of people. So let us move on to the next question that she talks about, and that is, well, let me ask it this way. What are your thoughts on the notion that many people give up on their artistic dreams in favor of a career that makes them more certain money? Like, instead of being a fine artist, you might go into graphic design, for example, because there is more money in it, more certain money in it. What are your thoughts on that? Is that valid? Is that something that is okay? Or if not, what else might be okay? Let's see. Alan, why don't you go first this time?
Capitalism sucks.
I co-sign.
No, I mean it is a problem, but like we are stuck wishing we could do what we want to do, and at the same time feeling guilty that we're not putting more emphasis on providing for our lives, right? Creating a certain space or meeting certain life goals like the house and cars and kids, and it's it can drive you a little mad trying to keep up in that regard and hold on to your artistic self. And so I think it's like, yeah, of course people are going to move over when I applaud a lot of people because I feel like, well, I don't know, this is the greatest thing, but they sort of set themselves a goal and a timeline, and then like if they don't meet that timeline, they get out of. I guess I'm thinking of actors and people in that business who have decided to give up. I was here as a year, and I just always thought that was crazy, and maybe I still do think that's crazy, but I also think those people are living happy lives doing what they're doing. So I'm floating here, and I'm gonna land on this word. The word. That's it. I don't know what I'm talking about. Sorry.
No, that's okay. No, but it is interesting though. Like there are so many people you read about. Oh, whoever. Hugh Jackman worked at a shoe store. I don't know if he did, but lots of people. I was, this person was a waiter. That person was a this.
Harrison
This
Ford
person
was
was
a pool boy, wasn't he, or something?
He was a
Sorry.
carpenter. He was a carpenter.
All right.
Yes.
Just like Jesus.
He didn't do Star Wars until his mid-30s,
Right.
right?
He started. No, he was a little bit younger than that because okay.
He was like 32
Yeah.
or 33.
Yeah, like that. When he played Bobby in American Graffiti, that was really his first role. And yes, I do know that he was born on July 13th, 1942. I am a Harrison Ford junkie. But when you look, Rodney Dangerfield worked hard and didn't get any kind of fame until his mid-50s. So there are lots of people who keep trying and keep at it and keep at it and keep at it because they can't not, right? But there are some people who didn't expect to go into whatever art form they're in, and somehow it found them, and then they have to deal with the fact that I was planning on being a lawyer, but then to fulfill a requirement, I took an acting class and I've never looked back. And that happens to some people, and sometimes you discover it and you're off to the races. So there's something there, I think, that we can kind of go, okay, do I need to be a full-time writer, or can I be a carpenter by day and write novels at night? That's a question for us to ask and answer. Like for myself, when I was trying to do music full time for a long time in the late 90s, early aughts, I was working my 40-hour-a-week NASA job, and at night I was going and gigging and gigging and gigging. So basically I was working like 120-hour weeks. And back then I could, right? But I can't anymore. And so now I have to be much more choosy and much more circumspect about how I spend my time, because then I had the energy to work 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. every day at NASA, and then 6:30 head out either to teach classes or to go to gigs or do whatever, so that I could eventually transition. And then I was a full-time musician for a number of years and loved that. But it was also just barely getting by financially, rather than, okay, I'm able to comfortably afford the life that I want to be living. I don't need a lot of money, but I do need to be able to pay my rent and feed my cats and, go see a show every once in a while. So to me, it depends. What about you, Megan? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I felt so called out by this because I think, which isn't to say that like the support work for other artists that I've done in a lot of different jobs that I've had in my career, and even like in my freelance work that I've done, that hasn't been meaningful, because it really has been. I think it's helped me also, but I think that at times I was definitely using it as a way to kind of deflect and get away from that feeling. Like somehow if I was helping someone that I thought was better than me, then it kind of absolved me of the responsibility of trying to be really great myself, or of even acknowledging that what I really want is to be amazing, to make really cool things that I'm proud of. And I think I just kind of got used to feeling that ache all the time, where I've always been someone who just has to make things, whether it makes me money or not. It just, I have to. And when I wasn't doing that, I was never really fulfilled just by helping someone else make their things. I always wanted to do it. And every time I've tried to deny that, I've really, that definitely resonated with me. I think I've been a shadow artist many, many times. And I'm really grateful now that I'm learning, that I'm going through this process and learning to take it more seriously, because I'm always so much happier when I at least have it in my mind that I need to create. I'm someone who needs to do that to be happy.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm right there with you. I have helped so many other people do their thing and then watch them go on to be uber successful. And I'm like, congratulations, I feel great for you. But I kind of feel lousy for me, because I could have also been doing that time on myself instead of necessarily just helping other people and sublimating that need to create to help them versus helping me. And I think I mentioned something about that last week as well. I'm sorry, Sergio, have you given your thoughts on this yet? Or am I losing my mind?
No, you're not losing your mind.
Okay, so
Right.
you talked about it?
No, I haven't.
Okay, phew, go for it.
I just want to say that earlier, speaking of reassurance, I think it's always cool to hear of artists that didn't find fame until later in their life. Like Ronnie Dangerfield didn't get respect until he was in his 50s, apparently. So if you think it's time to give up out there on your creative pursuits, please don't. Please keep trying. Please keep creating. And as far as the question at hand goes, I can totally understand the struggle of wanting to be more practical with work and such so that you're more financially stable and such, but art tops all for me. So I think being creative in the way that fulfills me is definitely my number one priority.
And I think that that's great. I mean, my father, as we know, not a great person, blah, blah, blah. But what's interesting for me is that, you know, he offered me a full 4-year free ride in college if I went into computer engineering, which, if you know anything about me, is like death to me. No offense to computer engineers. It's not my thing. And because I wanted to do something else, I had to pay for my own school because he just wouldn't pay for any of it if I didn't go into what he wanted me to go into. And so because of that, I was an English major. I got jobs going out and doing tech support, of all things, interestingly, computer tech support after not wanting to be a computer engineering major. But, I ended up working at NASA. But even then, I sort of went through and went, okay, what creative thing can I be doing on top of that? And that's how I ended up traveling the world for NASA, teaching people how to save the Earth, was because I kept looking for angles, even though I was working at NASA doing tech support and fixing people's passwords on their Macintosh computers or whatever. At the same time, I always kept an eye out for what cool creative project can I latch onto. And so I was doing work on the computer of this wonderful woman named Elisa Levine, who is a soil scientist. And I love, love, love Elisa. We're friends to this day. And I said to her at one point, I love you, I adore you. If there's ever anything I can do that would be working with you, let me know. And she said, well, actually, I just got this grant and I need someone to do X. Are you willing? And I went, heck yeah. And that changed the trajectory of my life. So if I have any piece of advice for you, if you're sort of in that place of, well, I have taken the time to make money, I might be an artist, but I also need to pay the bills and pay the rent and all that. Wherever you are, whatever you're doing, I agree with Sergio completely. Don't stop making your art, but also see what kind of creative mischief you can get into at the job. Keep looking for ways that you can be creative and artistic in what you're already getting paid to do, because they are out there. I promise you. And that's something that I think we don't think about enough, is that if you are in that place where, hey, I have to be able to pay the rent, no question, it's super important. And is there something, and if so, can you do the research to find out what it is in what you're already doing that you can find that will help you keep plugged into that creative, inspirational part of you? Alrighty.
I completely agree.
Awesome. I'm glad you do. All right. So, Megan, you mentioned the shadow artist. And I would love, love, love if you would talk about, because you mentioned it first, what is a shadow artist and how should we handle it if that's what we're doing? What are your thoughts?
I think the shadow artist is someone who kind of sees themselves as only a support structure for other artists and not someone who either deserves to be or who can create on their own. And I think if we're falling into this trap and we want to be creating more, I think part of how to get past that is to really consider like if there's cognitive dissonance there, if it makes you feel bad, I mean, that those feelings are telling you something. And I think part of that realization is realizing that if there isn't space in your life for it right now, maybe there needs to be. And maybe the most important thing needs to be figuring out where that space is going to fit and what it will look like for you. I know that's kind of how it worked out for me, but it took me a long time because I really wanted to believe that just being a shadow artist was enough, that I was just so altruistic and giving that, only supporting other people was enough for me. But it really wasn't. And until I was ready to grapple with that and to figure out that, my life is going to have to change. I pretty much stopped watching TV for, a few years. And yeah, I mean, I moved to the city because I really wanted to be around more other creative people. And I wasn't necessarily getting that where I lived before. I mean, I made a lot of different changes in my life because I realized that was something that mattered to me more than anything else. And it had to be the priority. Obviously I still had to, pay the bills too, but I think once I grapple with that, I couldn't ungrapple with it after that.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't go back to the time before when I just wasn't letting myself think about it.
Absolutely. I agree wholeheartedly. And it's interesting. Once you know it, you can't unknow it. Once you've figured that out for yourself, there's no way to go back and pretend you don't know. So yeah, I agree. Again, 152%. Alan, what are your thoughts on that, on the shadow artist, and how should we handle it if that's what we're doing?
Well, the shadow artist, my thoughts are, it's probably a part we all as artists have played at some point, or have sort of sat adjacent to where we want to be in an artistic endeavor. But I don't want to, I think we've sort of been saying like, oh, I spend my time supporting different artists and blossoming them and not working myself. And I think that's very important, but I think we can reframe that so that when you are helping another artist, you're supporting someone else, because I think a lot of art is collaborative in its efforts. Mm-hmm. That in those cases, then it's you can learn a lot in those moments from helping someone else or getting involved in someone else's project. And that's what it sounds like you did, Isolde. And I'm sure, Megan, I think you said you learned a lot from working on those projects. And so that's development of your inner artist as well, right? And so sometimes I think that there are moments where we have to be a shadow artist. You just don't want to lock yourself in a place of being, that's all you are, that's all you're good for, mm-hmm. because you've seen other people do better, or you see other people are funnier or smarter or better writers, and then you think like, well, what do I have? And I think you said it last week, Isolde, as like you have your voice, you have your view of the world to share. And if you've been living as a shadow artist for a certain time, it's like, all right, well, wake up, and now it's time to arrive, and you're hearing this message. So step forward into the light and be your own artist for yourself, not to discount what you've been doing, but to make use of what you've been doing.
Oh, absolutely. And, let's clarify something, I think, because you hit the nail on the head there. Being a shadow artist it's not the same thing to me as being an artist who works in collaboration with other artists to support their art sometimes. The thing about the shadow artist to me is that it is someone who desperately maybe wants to do their own art, but instead hides their own creativity, hides their own inner artist, and sublimates their needs to help other people. So you don't create your own because you're too scared or you're nervous or self-conscious or whatever, but instead you're generous and very helpful to others, but you never work on your own. And that is, to me, what a shadow artist is, rather than someone who, collaboration is great. I firmly believe in collaboration. And there are times when you support me and there are times when I support you, and that's fabulous. It's only when the person desperately wants to do their own thing too, and doesn't ever do it because it's more comfortable, I guess, to help other people than to work on their own stuff, that their shadow artist is born.
Yeah. I feel like they've said no to themselves. I feel like I'm getting this image of someone just saying no, like discipline, not you. You're not an artist.
Right.
And to themselves, to their little artist self, and be like, okay, well, I'll slide over here. I really appreciate it though, and I'll support everyone else. But I think just like, don't say no to your, like, let yourself be the artist now. Don't
Absolutely.
say no.
Absolutely. Sergio, what are your thoughts?
Um, yeah, as far as shadow artists go, I think maybe when I was younger, I might have experienced that. But as I've gotten older and really knew that I was an artist and that's what I wanted to do with my life,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what made me happiest,
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I experienced that too much myself as an adult. And I guess I just want to be adamant with my encouragement. If you feel like you might have been a shadow artist or are a shadow artist, if you're afraid to express yourself, to sing, to paint, to build, I just want you to know that we're all scared, we're all afraid, and at the risk of sounding redundant, please just create. Just go create, even if you don't show
Yes.
anybody, and see how you feel afterwards.
You know, it's really funny what you just said. It's one of the reasons I love living in this city, in New York City. It's because anything you think about trying, someone else is either thinking about it or already doing it. And because that's the point, right? It's like we are in many ways, we are in a unique time. The people more and more people are working from home. More and more people don't have commutes. So what if you were to take that commuting time and instead use it to create something you've always wanted to create? And that when I work with companies and
Nice.
organizations to help them with this, that's the kind of stuff I'm talking about. Yeah, absolutely. Take the time that if you're on the subway or on the metro or on the train or whatever, see if you can write while you're doing that or read or do something that will add to your creative experience of your life. And that's a lot of it is like just start, just begin, and it doesn't have to be great as long as you start where you are. And that is super important. Has everybody talked about this question already? I don't remember.
Yeah.
So
Great. Okay.
Yeah, I believe so.
So my version of this is that I couldn't not do it. I started because I loved to sing. That was my thing. Apparently, I sang harmonies before I could speak, according to my mother, because she's a singer. I wanted to sing, and so I auditioned for the school musical, and I just happened to get in, and I just happened to have future Tony and Grammy winners at school with me. So it was an amazing, Jeffrey Seller and Andrew Lippa were in the first musical I ever did. They were in it with me. when I think about that, I'm like, I was breathing rarefied air in some ways because they're both so talented at what they do now. But all of that sort of led me to writing, and now I create whatever I'm inspired to create. And I still have trouble of thinking myself as an artist, and I talked about this last week, perhaps because I try to do so many things, because I write and I sing and play music, and I do all of these other things that are all creative, and maybe it's better for me to go, okay, I do just the one. I truncate what I do because otherwise I start thinking I'm a Jill of all trades and a master of none. And that's a problem for me because I do too many things. And then thinking myself as an artist becomes a little bit challenging, not because I'm afraid to do the art or the creative thing, but because I try to do too many of them and therefore don't feel like I am really an artist in any of them. And that's a different kettle of corn, I think, than a different way of another way of looking at it. So that's my thought on it. All right. The next question that I have. Okay. So this is a tough one, and it kind of leads in from what I was just saying. As an artist, you have to take leaps of faith. That's kind of what Cameron says a little bit later in the chapter. And basically, your early efforts might suck, and you have to be okay with it. You have to be okay with the fact that you're not as good as you envision yourself being or you imagine yourself being. Megan, you were talking about that you expected yourself to be Hemingway when you were at 12. And it's kind of like social media to me, that we judge other people's A-reel against our B-reel, if you see what I mean, or A-roll against our B-roll. They are putting up the very best of what they do, and we are putting up where we are, and it makes you feel uncomfortable, I guess. And so how do we do that? How do we take the leap of faith as artists that it's okay if it's not what we envisioned? It's okay if my painting sucks. It's okay. What do we need to do in order to make that okay inside our own heads to keep us creating? What are your thoughts? Sergio, why don't you go first this time?
Sure. I just want to point out something that was written in the book, the main book that you can read alongside the workbook, where she mentions or says, there will be, there will be many times when we won't look good to ourselves or anyone else. We need to stop demanding that we do. It is impossible to get better and look good at the same time. Remember that in order to recover as an artist, you must be willing to be a bad artist. Oh man, I underlined that 1,000 times, which is a bit hyperbolic. I'm just trying to emphasize how much that I really related to that. And I think that's something that I'm still struggling with myself is judging my art and my writing and if it's good enough and if it's engaging enough and if the punctuation and the grammar and all these things that come along with it. And also with my music, but I think more so with my writing. I think when I find that I care more about something, then I judge it more. And the old adage of being your own worst enemy.
Sure.
So it's definitely something I'm still struggling with, but I'm trying to get better with.
That's awesome. And it's really funny because what do I have as my quote from her? Stop demanding that you look good all the time. You won't. Yeah. Literally, I had the same thing. I was just hadn't talked about it yet. But yeah, absolutely. Cameron says progress, not perfection. My version of that is make marvelous mistakes. It's okay to mess up. That's all part of it. It's all part of the process of creative, and I'm going to keep calling it creative discovery, not necessarily recovery. But your point is incredibly well taken, Sergio. Alan, why don't you take this question? What are your thoughts on this?
It's something I wish I could really embrace more in my own life. I hate doing anything that's not immediately magic. So I really hold myself back from doing stuff, but I'm trying to obviously get over that, and that's a process. And I've just been, it makes me think of, I'm convoluting two things, but sometimes you just do it to say you're an artist, and you don't do it to do good work. And if you're comparing your work to other people's work, that's already an issue as an artist, because you're gonna see, like, even if it's their A roll and you think it's your B roll, then it's gonna be your B roll, and you won't find what's great about that role that makes it an A roll. If that makes sense.
Sure.
But I just remember when I was doing improv, and I just started out doing improv. I just moved to the city, and there were teams that would perform so much that whether they were good or bad didn't matter. You just knew that they were an improv team, that there were a bunch of comedians performing regularly. And so they would post about it, you would know about it, and you would just like see it, whether you would know that they existed as artists, whether or not you enjoyed their work when you went to see them, or even if you did enjoy it, or if you knew that the comedians are funny or not. But like, just the in a way, they were just practicing their art, right?
Sure.
That's kind of what improv is anyway. But getting up there and just doing it for nobody, or doing it for just your friends, or doing it for a full house, you do it no matter the stakes. You put it up, you keep doing the work, you're an artist. And so you're sort of announcing yourself they were announcing themselves to the world, and people got to know them, and they went on to do other stuff. And some of those people are probably famous or working on really cool projects, and it's great, but they kept doing that. And I really admire that. It's something stuck with me for so long. It's just like, put yourself out there, show up and do it. And it's harder to do than it is to say, but it's something that's sort of stuck with me through that time.
Yeah, absolutely. And the whole, in the stand-up scene here, for sure, and in DC where I used to live, you don't go to one, you go to six. I know people who would go to an open mic, and then right as soon as that open mic was finished, they'd go to the next open mic, and then they'd go to the next, and 5 or 6 open mics a night. In New York City, that's possible because there are that many in non-COVID
Right.
times. There are that many open mics. If you're living somewhere where that's tougher, my goodness, grab you a Facebook group or start your own Facebook group and find other people who are interested in getting on Zoom and helping each other with material. I'm going to tell you, and I think I mentioned this last week, why did I start the Vegan Writers of New York City group? It was because I wanted to find other like-minded people who were artistic and creative who, would be interested in helping each other grow as writers. And we are now, because of COVID, because it's cold, whatever, we meet virtually. It doesn't necessarily have to be live every time. It would be nice if it were, but it doesn't have to be. A lot of this kind of thing can be done on Zoom or on one of the other platforms that allows you to be in meetings together and help each other grow as artists. You can collaborate with people in Australia or in Guatemala or in Ecuador or in Kazakhstan. It doesn't matter where, as long as you are all trying to be better artists and improve your craft. And that happens, it can happen live or it can happen, is it live or is it Memorex? I'm dating myself here, but yeah, it can be something that is something that is on your terms, but also something that you keep going and keep making happen. Megan, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that this has always been really the biggest thing holding me back, like that fear of being bad or of appearing bad to myself almost, even if nobody else sees it. Because I think I was always a little bit afraid that if the work I was creating was bad and it wasn't getting better, then that would mean somehow that I wasn't really meant to be creative, but like it's some destiny or whatever, and not just, a skill you develop over time. And yeah, I think that was really, really a huge struggle. And honestly, what helped me to break out of that is just writing over and over again, like in morning pages, even, it's okay if things aren't perfect. It's okay if things aren't perfect, because that definitely didn't come naturally to me, like that understanding that it's part of the creative process for things to be bad. I mean, when like the beautiful sculptures made by, gosh, my mind is going blank right now, but I mean, every beautiful sculpture starts with a block of marble, right? And and storytelling is really the same way, I think, no matter what kind of thing you're creating, no matter what kind of story you're making, it always starts from nothing. And a lot of times when we see the creative journey like dramatized, because stories have to be exciting, I feel like a lot of times they just kind of gloss over the parts where, the person making the thing is just really awful at it for a really long time. And that's just part of it. It's just really part of that development. It wasn't until I started to understand that I started to almost embrace that process in a way. I mean, it's definitely still hard for me sometimes, but it is easier now because I understand that it's just natural. There's been no artist ever who wasn't bad when they started.
Absolutely. And what's interesting, there's a movie called Chaplin about the life of Charlie Chaplin that Robert Downey Jr. played him. And he was on the lot at one point in the movie and they said, go to costuming, get some clothes on. And there's this thing where he's talking about it, recalling the memory. He's like, yeah, I know people want to think that I walked into costuming and the bowler was there and the angels lifted it and I put it on and I became Charlie Chaplin. And he's like, actually what happened looks more like this. And then they show this fast montage of him running all over costuming and trying on this outfit, trying on that outfit, trying this, doing that, and just running like crazy trying to figure what is it that I could possibly do. And then somehow he found the bowler and somehow he tried it. But it wasn't an elevated, angelic thing. It was the work. He had to put in the work and find what worked for him. And when I watched that scene, I was like, yes, that's it exactly. And I think that one of the things that we have to do as artists and heck as people is you got to give yourself permission to be a beginner, right? That's the best way I can say it. Like as an example, I'm doing this project right now where I'm doing a digital painting every single day for a year. And I am allowed to be terrible at it. I have no preconceived notions that I am a good painter. None. And because of that, because I'm allowed to be a terrible painter, I'm able to do this thing every day and I release it out into the world with no judgment. Interestingly, a bunch of people have been like, when are you going to turn some of these into NFTs? And that's another story. That's another conversation altogether. But it's interesting to have that kind of feedback. The other thing I'm allowed to be terrible at is a stand-up comedian. Now, I've done stand-up comedy. I love stand-up comedy. I have a great time doing stand-up comedy, but I kind of suck at stand-up comedy. So I could have been really
That
judgmental.
sounded like a bit right there.
That's funny, but it's really true. I mean, I took a class. I've done some open mics. I've got a 5-minute set that I worked on through blood, sweat, and tears, but I'm not invested in it like I have these preconceived notions that I'm supposed to be good at it. Unlike music. Music, I have these preconceived notions. I've been playing the violin since I was 5. I've been singing since before then. I teach people how to sing. I go into companies and I help them team build through singing, for Pete's sake. So I better be good at music. So when I'm handed a musical instrument that I've never played before, there's a part of me that's going, well, you better be good at it because, you're a musician. And the thing is, maybe it's a musical instrument I've never seen before, have no idea how to play, and I will suck at. And I will judge myself harshly because in my mind, because I'm already a musician, I better be freaking good at it. So we have to give ourselves permission to be beginners without judgment, without judging anything about what we're trying to do when we're starting, because otherwise it'll just kick you in the butt day in and day out, and it might keep you from creating. And like Sergio said, whatever you do, you got to create. So that's my thought on all of that. And I like that I did
I
a
love your
bit.
daily painting.
What was that?
I love your daily paintings.
Yeah, they're awesome.
Thank you. I'm having a
Yeah,
lot of
they're
fun with
great.
them. It's
The Doctor Strange one was really cool.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, that was super fun to make. That one was we saw Spider-Man No Way Home, and just I was blown away, and I thought, okay, I need to
Love that movie.
pay the homage. Alrighty. So let's move on. Let's talk about the next section of the book, which is commonly held negative beliefs and which ones resonate for you. Does everybody have the book in front of them? Would you want to read them out, or would you like me to read all of them?
Do you want some assistance?
I don't. I'm fine with it either way. If you happen to have the book ready, let's just do them. And it's basically, I can't be a successful, prolific, creative artist because, and there's a whole bunch of 20 of them. So if we all take 5, for example, we should get through all of them. How about I'll take the first 5, Megan, you take the next 5, Alan, you take the next 5, and Sergio, you take the next 5. How does that sound?
Okay.
What page is that on again? I'm sorry.
Well, I don't know.
30 of my book.
Yeah, it's different. I think we have different editions. So yeah, mine is also page 30 and
Okay.
31.
Yep, get
I
it.
found it.
Okay, great. So here's the list of I will start with 1 through 5 commonly held negative beliefs, and it starts out as, I can't be a successful, prolific, creative artist because 1, everyone will hate me. 2, I will hurt my friends and family. 3, I will go crazy. I guess I'll love Vincent van Gogh. 4, I will abandon my friends and family. And 5, I can't spell. Interesting. Now it's 6.
I don't have good enough ideas. 7, it will upset my mother and or father. 8, I will have to be alone. 9, I will find out I am gay if straight. 10, I will be struck straight, if gay.
11, I will do bad work and not know it and look like a fool. 12, I will feel too angry. 13, I will never have any real money. 14, I will get self-destructive and drink, drug, or sex myself to death. 15, I will get cancer, AIDS, or a heart attack, or the plague.
16, my lover will leave me. 17, I will die. 18, I will feel bad because I don't deserve to be successful. 19, I will have only one good piece of work in me. And 20, it's too late. If I haven't become a fully functioning artist yet, I never will.
Ooh, these are some tough ones. So, did any of them resonate for you, or should I go first and say which ones resonated for me?
Oh, it's Olda.
I say,
Whoop, whoop. I'll go first. Hey. Number 11, I will do bad work and not know it and look like a fool. That's a tough one for
Yes.
me. And then I will feel bad because I don't deserve to be successful. That's early stuff, early stuff for me. And I've never in my life thought that I would be struck gay or anything like that. I'm like, I didn't realize that. And there was one other one that struck for me, but I can't see it right now, but it's in there. Those are the two big ones that I kind of went, yeah, that kind of makes me. Oh yeah, I will never make any real money. That's another one that sort of made me go because I don't have as much trouble creating as I do creating so that I'm financially successful. I think that's where I am on the spiral that I was talking about before. What about you all? Alan, would you like to go first on this? Did any of them resonate for you?
Well, I was reading 15. I will get cancer, AIDS, or a heart attack, or the plague, and then it caught me. And I was like, oh, we're in the plague because not enough people are artists. And once we get all you artists out there to be artists, we will get over COVID. I don't know.
Okay, why not?
It's a big bunch of specifically weird thoughts that I don't know. I'm just taking them in, and I think there's some that are like struck straight or find out I am gay. I thought those are interesting because like there must be some sort of, I guess, artists are gay. That's what she has a lot of. Anyway,
some are sure.
I will have to be alone. I thought probably I Will Go Crazy is the one that gets me, but I don't know.
Yeah, and it's possible that none of them do because you're just pretty mentally healthy. Good for you. No, the thing about
I'm
it
definitely
is
not mentally healthy.
well, no, but isn't it interesting that like when I read this, it made me wonder. Did she survey people? Did she go, what are some of your commonly held negative beliefs about your ability as artists? Where did she come up with this list? Because for me, if I were really going to be honest, I'd be like, well, I will create and waste a lot of time because nothing I do will be any good is probably one. And another one is that I will not have enough money to pay the rent if I dedicate all of my time to making art. Like, if I were going to be really honest, that's it for me. Those are the two. I don't worry about other people. I don't worry about being self-destructive in any way. I know there's a fear with Vincent van Gogh and his story and everything, but I'm like, yeah, I drink every few months. I have a drink. Not, you know what I mean? So I'm not. Those are not things that really bother me. But the part about feeling deserving to be successful, having the energy to do the work, and also being able to pay the rent and have the life that I'd like, even though I don't need private jets, are probably the three that if I were going to go, what are my beliefs about it? Those are probably it. Let's see. Megan, what are your thoughts?
A couple of these definitely resonated a lot with me. Definitely the money one for me too, that I'll never be able to make money with my creativity, that I'll never be, or that, the things I create will never be worthy of money, I guess. And also that number 20, that it's too late. I think that held me back for a long time when I was like, I was literally 25 thinking thoughts like, well, gosh, I'm not, super successful publishing my 12th book now. Like, obviously it's just like, I'm, the crypt keeper over here. Like,
my goodness.
I held myself to that standard for a really long time as more time continued passing. And when I think, it's on this page when she says like, in like the voice of somebody who's like asking that question, do you know how old I'll be when I really learn to play piano or act or paint? And then the answer is yes, the same age you will be if you don't. And that was the realization I came to that really helped me reckon with that. Like it doesn't matter how old I am when I get to the place I want to be. It matters that I'm starting now because I can't change what I didn't do when I was 12 years old. I can change what my future looks like, and that's where I should focus my creative energy.
Absolutely. And you know, it's funny. I embellished that story as her talking to a friend of hers who was in his 60s and really had always wanted to play the piano. And he said, you know, do you have any idea how old I'll be before I'm any good? And she said, exactly the same age you'll be as if you never start. And I tell that story all the time because if of anything in this book, that concept is what resonated with me more than anything else in this book. And that is what got me started on the guitar. That's what got me writing. I wrote all the songs for my album. It's what got me started writing my first book. It's what has me doing a painting a day. I think, you know what? If you're not going to start, then that's on you. But once you do start, then you're on the path. And that's the beauty of it. And in fact, my dear friend Petra, who I've talked to you about, who was the NPR books editor, who just recently died, she and I were talking about that. And she said, you know, Isolde, something I really respect about you is that if you want to do something, you just frickin' go do it. And I thought to myself, well, yeah. And she goes, most people don't do that. And I thought, how sad. She's like, I know lots of people who keep saying they want to write a book, but you just went ahead and you wrote one. And then you wrote 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6. And I went, yes. Because in my mind, that notion of if you're not going to do it, who will, is really important. It's important to go, start now. Start now. If that's what you want to do, start now. And if it's painting, go buy a watercolor set at your closest CVS. If it's writing a book, take a piece of paper and start writing. Why? Because no one's going to tell your story but you. No one. No one in the world will be able to do it. So it's on some level for me, those few sentences in this book changed everything, because up until then I kept thinking to myself, oh, any songs I write are going to suck. So what? So what if they suck? You know, because it's okay if they suck. It's perfectly fine, because even if you think they suck, they might be miracles to somebody else. But even so, get the bad ones out so that the good ones can flow through you.
Yeah.
You know? All right. Who has not talked about this? Sergio, you have not talked about this, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Which ones resonated for you?
Definitely number 20 as well. That it's too late. Megan, that one really hit me as well. And let me just reiterate that Harrison Ford was 35 when the first Star Wars came out.
Whoop,
So it's
whoop.
never too late. Please keep trying. I feel like a broken record on tonight's episode. But other ones that stuck out to me, number 17, I Will Die. I don't know if there's a correlation between my art and my death, but I guess that's just more of a general fear to have. And number 11, I know we talked about it before already, so I'll just say again that number 11, I will do bad work and not know it and look like a fool. That's probably the one that hit me the most. And one of my biggest fears is producing work that's not good. And then, like Megan mentioned earlier, just feeling like, then this is not what I should have been doing with my life.
I hear what you're saying, and I put a question up to all of us to think about and maybe even discuss right now. Who gets to judge whether or not you look like a fool? Like it's a question that we can all sort of ponder, and I don't mean just the four of us. I remember when I was a kid, and again, English is not my second language. It's not my first language. It's my fourth language. And when I first came to this country, I could literally say hello, goodbye, thank you, and where's the bathroom? That was it. Those were the only words I knew how to say when I arrived in the USA. So the kids, of course, being kids, made a lot of fun of me because I did the first couple of months, I spoke no English, and it was bad. And so they would routinely try to make me feel like complete crap because I didn't understand words, or I couldn't say the words or whatever. And I had to work through that because I had to realize that a lot of what they were doing was based on sort of mob mentality. They felt better about themselves by denigrating someone else, right? And so that notion really stuck with me as I grew and as I became an adult. And whenever someone else goes, "Oh, that's bad," or "That sucks," or "You're this," or "You're that," I honestly just go, I feel kind of bad for you that you feel the need to be negative about somebody else's efforts, because it must mean that you're really, really scared to make your own. So that's really my thought about it. So what are your thoughts? Do you have any thoughts about this notion about how we can let go of that, or who we give that kind of power to judge us like that? What are your thoughts?
I have a thought.
For me, I think it's. Oh, go ahead, Megan.
Oh, sorry, Sergio. Well, I've been thinking about this lately because I also kind of am really plagued by that fear. People will see what I'm doing and they'll just think that it's not good, and then I don't know, the universe will explode or something. But what has helped me with that is just thinking it through to kind of the end point of that thought. Like, okay, someone sees something I did and they don't like it. Like, what does that even mean? I mean, what it means is that maybe they laugh, maybe they think the thought, and then, they're going to move on with their life. I'm not the center of their universe. I mean, whatever thing they saw that they thought sucked, I mean, it's going to be a blip in their universe. And why do I even I don't have to internalize that. It doesn't have to become a part of me.
Right.
If it's someone whose opinion I really care about for some reason, I can take that as criticism if there's something constructive in there, but I don't necessarily have to make it that just because someone else has a thought. It doesn't have to affect me at all if I don't want it to.
For sure. Absolutely. And what's interesting? To that end, the question that I've pondered about all of this is, what is the worst that would happen or could happen if you decide to do your art? What is the absolute worst that could happen? And I can never come up with a really bad thing. I always come up with things that are bad maybe in my own head, but there's nothing really terrible about it. If I decide to do my art, there's nothing bad that's going to happen. I just do my art, as long as I'm not hurting anybody, I'm just making my art. All right. Who has not talked about this? Have we all talked about it?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So let's move on to affirmations. And here's another question that I've pondered. How hard or easy is it to say nice things about yourself? What do you think? Megan, do you want to go first maybe? Is it hard, easy? How hard or easy is it to say nice things about yourself?
I think before I did this chapter, actually, I would have thought that it was easy because I mean, it's part of my, my meditation. I get up, I meditate, I do my affirmations every morning. But when she talked about like the practice of looking at, what comes up when you write that down, and are you really paying attention to that? Once I started writing those thoughts down, I realized that every time I wrote a nice thing about myself, even though I was used to writing that down, I still had all of these other really negative feelings around that. And so that was kind of difficult for me this week because it's like, wow, I didn't know that I had all of these insecurities that I hadn't even really dealt with yet, that I still really need to process, I think.
It's interesting, isn't it? When we look at that and go, oh, I can write it, but am I really feeling it? And if I'm really feeling it, what comes up when I am really feeling it? That's a totally different set of experiences, I think. And one goes much more in depth into our souls as far as, yeah, I can write, I can say this. It's funny, Alan, I think you said it was, I talk about my childhood as a matter of fact. And on some level I do. And on some level, now is not the appropriate time for me to rage and scream about the fact that my father beat the crap out of us when I was a kid. So I don't, right? I'm not going to talk about it in those terms,
Right.
But believe you me, I've talked about it in therapy, right? So there is some of that. How do we get to that really vulnerable, tender part of us and do it in a way that's safe, but also that makes progress? So I do want to get to both of you, Alan and Sergio, but let me just give a quick quick definition. I love Shakti Gawain's definition of an affirmation because I didn't talk about it, but I want to say this first before we move on. An affirmation is a strong, positive statement that something is already so. Bear that in mind as we're talking about affirmations, that it's a strong, positive statement as if something is already so, rather than hoping for it to be so. But you're putting yourself in that envisioned place that it already is so. Alrighty. Alan, what about you? How hard or easy is it to say nice things about yourself with respect to affirmations?
With respect to affirmations, I think it's okay. Like, I'm able to say them in the moment. I definitely have other feelings come up for me in those moments, but it's like self-care, right? So you have to, in those moments when I think of an affirmation and I'm saying them, then I have to sort of tune into myself and believe it. And I feel like if I believe it, then it's true. And I'm a big believer in like putting out what you want into the world and saying those things and saying them if they're true, kind of like the secret approach, but just sort of calling into action yourself to arrive at the place you want to be. And so like sometimes when I need it, I will fully hug myself.
Oh, good for you.
Give myself physical touch. And it's nice, and it's surprisingly nice because you don't do it instinctively. And I feel like that's the kind of feeling I get from if I say an affirmation and I allow myself to believe it. But it's sort of a choice, right? We get to choose. And so I make that choice to believe myself in that moment. And then I fight my battles later.
That's very,
demons arrive.
That's, yeah, they will arrive, but in the moment, that's lovely. I think that's a beautiful and very touching, no pun intended, a very touching way of doing that and choosing in the moment to believe it. I can't do that, so I'm very, very pleased for you that you can. That's awesome. Sergio, what are your thoughts?
I really like what Alan just said, that affirmations are almost like the vocal equivalent of a hug. I think is a really neat way to think of affirmations. And I feel that affirmations are a very powerful thing. And they are a little harder for me to do for myself. But I do like to compliment other people, and not just in a frivolous way, if I actually mean it. And I just remember a few years back, I was taking a class and the teacher or professor gave everyone these little different positive affirmations that said different things on these little slips of paper, and told us to give them out. And so I did that, gave them to a bunch of coworkers, and the way that it affected them was just such a rad, cool thing. The smiles and how happy these little sentences made them, because I tried to personalize the affirmations to the specific people. And just the effect that it had for me is just cements how powerful that can be. And I'm definitely working on giving myself more of that and believing it.
That's awesome. That is awesome. Yeah, affirmations. Do we have any? Do you have any that you're using? Did you create any for yourselves this week? Megan, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I definitely did. I think the affirmation that's been most helpful to me has been, what I'm creating is worthwhile. I'm at the beginning of my journey, and that's okay. Yeah, really just those two have been the most important ones this week.
Those sound really good. Oh, and I heard a kitty.
My cat. I'm going to go in and out.
All right. Alan, any affirmations that you have?
Yeah, let's see. I said this one, I am task oriented. I can break up large jobs into manageable pieces.
That's a great one.
Goal, really.
No, but it's also, if you struggle with that, that's a good affirmation. Sergio? Oh, did you have another one?
Oh yeah, I wrote this one. I was trying to find some what I think are interesting ones with this. But this one is, there's only the way you do it. All else is speculation.
It's true.
I love that.
Yeah, and if it's tangible, that's different than if you're just thinking about it. That's very true. Any others?
For me?
Yeah, that you want to share? Some of these I'm thinking will be fodder for someone who's listening who's going, well, I don't know how to write an affirmation. What the heck are you talking about? So
I wrote, I am here, I am strong, I am young. And I
Cool.
also
Here
gave
you
my this
are.
one. I am loved, I give love, I am love.
oh, I love that one. I love that one. That's a great one.
All right.
Sergio, any thoughts?
Yeah, I just have a few that I'll share. The first one is that you're talented, you're caring, and you're passionate. And then the other one was your mindfulness means a great deal and only assists in overall impact. So those are two that I wrote down.
Cool. One of the things that I will say is, generally speaking, she asks that you make your affirmations in the first person. So if you're listening to this and you're going, oh, it's a little bit more intimate to say I statements. So sometimes at the beginning, people, when they're doing affirmations, will say you, and there's a little bit of separation perhaps. And I don't know if that's what you intended, Sergio, but that is what she talks about in when she's talking about affirmations, that affirmations you want to do as if they are true for you already. So I statements tend to be more challenging and also in the long run more effective because you're taking it in as you're saying it. I this, I that. So when you're talking about some of the things that you mentioned, Sergio, is it a daily practice for you to write them down, or what are you doing with your affirmations?
So like Megan, I meditate as well. I try to do that daily.
Mm-hmm.
And that would be the moment where, as I'm breathing in and out, I would try and say that stuff. But I don't write it down, and I don't typically do it, I think, or tell myself these things as much as I should. And I agree, using I instead of you or your definitely makes sense.
Yeah, and it's tough, isn't it? Because it brings it right home to you, to me. I have to look at myself in the mirror when I say this. My affirmations are: I am enough, I have enough, I do enough. That's one that I've been using for years. Another one is I can both help other people and also create the life I want for myself. And the last one is I am a financially and creatively successful artist. That's the third one that I've been using a lot in the last, I'd say, year to a year and a half. Those are probably the three that I use as I end my meditation in the morning. Those are the ones that I generally use. And sometimes I draw joyful success to me is another one. That's another thing that you can use as far as an affirmation. And I'm glad. Thank you. The other thing that she talks about in the book are blurts. When you do an affirmation, when you say something like I am enough, I have enough, I do enough, the reaction that you might have from your, what she calls your inner critic, that subconscious, no, you're not, or what are you talking about? This sucks, or whatever those things are, she calls blurts. Those are the things that come up when you say or write or think your affirmations, and those are objections, right? Those are being spouted by that inner part of you that is the censor, as she calls it. So I don't know if you want to share any of your blurts. I kind of made the decision that I'm going to just be out there with this, and I'm going to tell you what my blurts are when I write some of these. Some of mine are: your only role is to help other people succeed in what they want to do. That's a big one for me. And keep the peace at all costs, which means you don't have time, energy, purpose to make art or be creative. You're too busy saving other people. Why are you bothering? No one will ever buy your books, and you're a shitty writer. Oh, got to make sure that I put the little the little explicit thing on this. Those are, and then the last one. Actually, wow, I have a lot. You'll never make money at this, and you're too tired to do both it and work that pays you is one. And then I don't deserve to make money as an artist. I only deserve to help other people thrive is is probably the biggest one, and that's right at my parents' door because I was such a peacemaker when I was a kid. So those are the blurts that I have. I don't know if you want to share any of yours, but if you're listening to this and you're going, the stuff comes up. That's the stuff that comes up for me when I do affirmations, and it's not something you control. It's the subconscious part of you that sort of bubbles it up for you, and then knowing that those are your blurts. Those are the subconscious reactions to what you're saying that's positive. Once you know those, you can look to dealing with them and flowing with them and then eventually thriving with them so that they no longer have such power over what you're trying to achieve as a creative person. So anybody else want to talk about their affirmations? I mean, their blurts?
I will.
Go for it.
Okay, mine are really melodramatic, so I'm going to read them in a dramatic voice. So,
Oh,
okay,
cool.
so-
I love it.
the affirmation I had was, I'm a talented creative. And so these were the blurts I had. You have no talent. You'll embarrass yourself because the things you make will suck. You're a talentless hack and a laughable poser. And
Wow.
you no one likes your stupid poems, Megan. That's my favorite one. And yeah, that was what
I
came
like
up
your
with.
poems. I like your poems.
I like your
Thank you
poems and
so
that
much.
voice you just did.
Yeah, good
Thank
poems, good
you.
voice.
Very animated.
All righty. Anybody else want to share their blurts? Because those were great. and I'm immediately, I just want to say, I immediately wanted to jump to your defense, Megan. That was I'm like,
Thank
what?
you.
What are you talking about?
Don't talk about my friend that way.
That's exactly.
Thank you. You're both awesome.
I love it. Alan, Sergio, would either one of you like to talk about your blurts? And you don't have to. This is just something so that if somebody's listening to this and they're having a trouble with it, that they can sort of know other people are going through this stuff.
I don't know if I can top the theatrics of those last words. Alan, what about you?
Oh, I mean, mine are not as cool, but I'll run through a couple of them, which are just, you're not doing it right.
Mm.
You're not focused enough. You're too old. Everyone hates you. You suck. You're stupid. You're undisciplined. You'll never be successful. Stop dreaming.
You sound like a Jewish grandfather when you do that. Did you mean to sound like a Jewish? Like if I
Absolutely not. I'm not trying to.
We're all doing voices.
no, I mean that's if I never knew either grandfather, but if I had, I imagine they might have sounded something like that. Not to diss grandfathers. I'm sure there are lots of grandfathers who are very supportive, but that whole like, you're gonna suck. I don't know why you're trying. This is something you shouldn't even be bothering with. Just sounded very much like a cantankerous older person who's not happy with the way their life turned out. Thank you for sharing that. It's tough because they can sound really powerful, I think, and that is a
Yeah.
big problem because they sound powerful and they're not powerful. They have zero power except for the power we give them. And yet in the moment they can feel really debilitating. So be aware that if you see those blurts coming, you're going to have to squash them and then deal with them. First squash them, then deal with them, because trying to deal with them when they're sneaky as all get out is really takes up a lot of energy. So squash them first, tell them to go sit down, and then deal with them one at a time at your leisure. All righty. We could go through the to be honest, we've been here for 2 hours now, and I know that you all have lives to get back to. So I want to say, is there anything from the rest of the exercises that made you go, I really want to share this? If there is something that you wanted to share about any of the tasks that she gave, like listing old enemies of your creative worth, or listing champions, or the Horror Story Hall of Fame, or writing a letter to the editor, any of those, I would love it if you'd share. But if not, then I think that we can perhaps do last thoughts and round out the night. What are your thoughts?
I think I'm good.
Alan, Megan?
Yeah, I think I'm okay too.
Okay.
Yeah. I guess I just wanted to say, like, some of these, there's a lot of stuff in there and it's a lot to work through. And I just want to say a lot of them seem to come at me sideways. And there were a couple that, like, there's one of my old enemies of my creative self-worth was in a place I never would have expected.
Hmm.
And it's sort of surprised me to find, and it wasn't like this person was an enemy or they were against me, but there's just a moment in our interactions where I was like, oh, that kind of took away my power in a way I didn't expect it to. And it wasn't someone, it was someone living their life separately, but for me it was like making their own choices, basically what was best for them. But in a way it made me have to accommodate them in a way that I think challenged me. I don't know, but it was not like a direct, someone says like, oh, you're not good or anything like that. If that makes sense. So like, I think when you look at these time travel moments, they can be disarming and surprising, I think, if you let yourself interrogate your past. Megan says, I love that you said interrogate your stories. What did you say? Interrogate your narrative? I thought that was such a good phrase. All right. That's all I wanted to say.
Cool. Yeah. And it's interesting how it can come out of left field and you're going, wait, what? I didn't expect that to be a thing. And all of a sudden you have a clue to something that's probably deeper than you thought it was, that you had no idea was even an issue. And some of this can take you into some deep, perhaps dark places, and some of it is really positive. I have a couple of things I want to share real quick. One starts out pretty awful, but ends well, I guess. My father, and this, I'm not trying to make this therapy, but it is very much a who was in control of you when you were a child kind of situation, as opposed to nurturing. And my father used to do this thing where he would hold a piece of paper in front of us, a piece of white paper, and he would say, I'm your father, and if I say this piece of paper is black, your job is to say, yes, Dad, it's black. And, or, you know, he would beat the shit out of us. That was the interaction. And many, many years later, I was participating and volunteering for something called the Clothesline Project. And I don't know if you've ever heard about it, but it is just like the AIDS quilt. It was a project where women would make art T-shirts, I would say, of different colors to hang up about their experience of various kinds of abuse, whether it's rape survivors or women who were traumatized because someone had assaulted them for being a lesbian, and different colors for different things. And white was if you didn't survive, you know, other people would make it for you, for women who had died because of domestic violence or various things. And teal or blue was survivors of child abuse. And I made the shirt, and we had on the National Mall in DC, we had a full viewing of all of the thousands of shirts that women had made. And I'd made mine. And as we were doing the sort of, we did kind of a ceremony almost to open the exhibit that was going to be there for the weekend. And I told the story about my father saying that you know, this piece, if I say this piece of paper is black, your job is to say that piece of paper is black. And I didn't realize there was a news camera right in my face as I was doing this, as I was telling the story. And I yelled out really loud, Dad, that piece of paper was white. And the entire, I don't know how many hundreds of people just erupted in applause. And I went, I didn't, you know, and I started crying, and I didn't realize that I needed to say that. You know, I didn't realize as an adult, I was 30 something years old, that I needed to say that to my inner 8-year-old, I guess. And so as you go through this process, you're going to find that there are going to be times when you have to sort of go back and talk to that little kid who didn't get the kind of nurturing and nourishment that they deserved to be artists, to be creative, to be the best version of themselves. There's going to be people who either, excuse me, let you down. Oh, hold on. Oh, have a frog in my throat. There are going to be the people who let you down, or, darn it, or who might have even gone so far as to actively abuse you. And these are all parts of the ingredients to helping you heal and also helping you become the artist and the creative that you're supposed to be. On the other hand, here's an encouraging thing that happened through these exercises. I remembered, as I told you, I started playing the guitar after the first time I did The Artist's Way back in 1997, and I took to it pretty quickly. And I started writing songs on it before I actually really knew what I was doing. And I debuted my song called Solstice Morn at a concert I was singing. And I wasn't supposed to play the guitar. I was only going to sing the song, and somebody else was going to play the guitar. And I kind of went, you know what? Screw it. I'm going to do it. And it was a complicated finger style. So if you play guitar, you know what I'm talking about. It's not as good as Al Petaway, of course, because he's a guitar god, but really complicated finger style guitar pattern. And I'd only been playing the guitar for like 4 months. And I debuted the song. And after everybody was, clapping after I sang it, and I said, well, I guess since you liked it, I get to tell you that this was my very first time playing the guitar in public, and I've been playing for 4 months. And they stood up and gave me a standing ovation, which I did not expect. But if you take that, yeah, it was really incredible. And if you take that chance, I think, if you just go, you know what, I'm just going to frickin' do it, you might be amazed at the response you get, whether it's from the people in your life or the universe or even just inside yourself. If you take the chance and you put your art out there, it can make miracles happen inside you, as well as, sort of a ripple effect throughout the rest of the world. And that, to me, is what this book is all about, is that it lets you do that. So that is my thought. Ta-da. All right. Ta-da. Exactly. So do any of you have any last thoughts before we hang it up for the night?
I love that you said that it can allow you to have a miracle, or the ripple effect to allow other miracles to happen.
Oh, I think that's so true. I think there's a ripple effect for sure.
And yeah, thank you again for having us on. Thank you for all the listeners, everyone who listened last week, everyone who's listening this week, and for all the great feedback. Thank you, Izolda and crew. Really excited to go along this process, and I had a lot of fun chatting with you about it tonight.
Awesome.
Can't wait for next week.
Yay. And Alan, Megan, any last thoughts before we talk about next week?
Oh yeah, there's a lot that we covered. My mind is like, oh man, we're really just diving in and working through this, and it's really cool to be doing it with you guys, and processing a lot on this journey. And I hope anyone who's going through it is, I hope you feel supported. And if you need anything, again, reach out. Izolda's got an Instagram. I got an Instagram. And thank you guys. And yeah, again, like Sergio said, thanks for those who listened and gave positive feedback and no negative feedback. I appreciate that.
And hey, even if you have negative feedback, I would love to know what the negative feedback is, frankly, because it helps me improve. So if you've got something to say that's like, oh, I have notes, Izolda. That's what I say to everyone. I have notes. If you have notes, drop me a DM or a comment about the show or whatever, and we'll see if we can improve it. All right, Megan, any last thoughts?
Yeah, definitely. Just that this has been a journey, even just in like the week and a half we've been doing it so far. I think it's a lot to go through and process, but I also think that it's really useful and helpful to go through it together. And I'm really grateful for the chance to do it like this with all of you, including everybody out there who's working along with us.
That's awesome. Yeah. And if you are doing it, I would love to hear from you. Actually, we would all love to hear from you. I think if you're on this journey with us, it would be really cool to know, just so that we can cheer you on. And heck, I'll name check you. I'll actually put your name out there. If you want to tell me that you're working on this project with us as we do it, I'd be happy to say a special in-person sort of thank you to you for doing it.
Shout out.
Yeah, it would be great to shout out to people. It would be really cool. I personally am super grateful for all three of you for being willing to go so deep and be so vulnerable and intimate. These are not easy topics that we talk about, because most of the time we're told not to talk about it by society, by parents, by friends, and the fact that you're willing to do it is amazing. So I'm super grateful for all of you for participating and being such incredibly giving people and artists to do this. So thank you.
Thank you, Izolda.
Oh, it's absolutely my pleasure. On next week's episode, we are going to be talking about week 2, recovering a sense of identity. So here's what's going to happen if you're following along. Read the week 2 chapter in my version, in my edition of the book. That is page 41. So that's starting with page 41. Read through week 2, do your morning pages, go on an artist date. And remember, an artist date does not have to be expensive. It can be going out and looking at the closest bridge that is near where you are, or watching ducks play in a pond, or whatever it is. It does not have to be expensive. Do your artist day, do your morning pages. If you read the chapter, go through the exercises. And next week we will be going through the chapter, the exercises, and talking about our experiences in the hope that it enriches not just us, but as we said, ripples out to you as you listen and you go through this. This is Isolde Trachtenberg for the Innovative Mindset Podcast. This episode is brought to you by Brain FM. I talk about it all the time. It's in the show notes. You know what it is. Until next time, I remind you to be bold, be creative, and most of all, be kind. Thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate you being here. Please subscribe to the podcast if you're new, and it would mean the world to me if you told a friend about it. Today's episode was produced by Isolde Trachtenberg and is copyright 2021. As always, please remember this is for educational and entertainment purposes only. Past performance does not guarantee future results, although we can always hope. Until next time, remember to be bold, be creative, and most of all, be kind.